The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. We return this morning to non-incumbent candidates for Cincinnati City Council. I want to remind everybody of the 9 seats on council, only 1 is vacated, that by Roxanne Qualls, who's running for mayor, and so it's technically open. The seat held by Pam Thomas is certainly in play, given that she was appointed in April, and 3 members of council, Seelbach, Simpson, and Sittenfeld, are in their first terms. 22 people are running, including 3 former council members, Amy Murray, Sam Malone, and David Mann. 4 endorsed Republicans, 4 endorsed Charterites, and 10 endorsed Democrats. 5 candidates are not endorsed by any party. I'm joined this morning by 2 candidates. Vanessa White is a graduate of Walnut Hills High School and the University of Cincinnati with an MBA from Xavier, and is currently a doctoral candidate in education at the University of Cincinnati. A real glutton for punishment there in terms of education. She is completing a term on the Cincinnati Board of Education that began in 2009. Ms. White lives in North Avondale, as endorsed by the Charter Committee of Cincinnati. Shawn Butler also graduated from Walnut Hills High School and the University of Cincinnati. He served until a few months ago as the Director of Community Affairs to Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory. This is Mr. Butler's first run for public office as an endorsed Democratic candidate. Welcome to Newsmakers, and Vanessa, in your case, welcome back.
Thank
but
you.
Wearing a different hat this time.
Yes,
in fact, let's start with you. Every candidate, especially brand new candidates, love to talk about government collaboration, working across lines, et cetera, et cetera. You've been on the school board for 4 years.
Yes.
Now you want to move over to city council. Realistically, what can city council do to help the school system? Because lots of city council candidates all agree that the schools are the future of our community. So given your experience, what do you think you can do to get these 2 important entities to work together?
I think I've learned a lot in my 4 years of governance, and I think it's been a pleasure for me to hear how many of the candidates want to improve on that, because we've certainly reached across those lines and have made some gains. When you talk about the community learning centers and having health opportunities that have grown in some of our schools, that's an opportunity to do that. And certainly we have SROs and we also have crossing guards, so there is some collaboration already, but I think it's how we share those services and how we get the maximum gains from them.
Was your experience on the board that there was communication going back and forth between the Board of Education and council, or between the school board and City Hall? Did you think it was it good, bad, indifferent?
I would say indifferent, and I think that is one of the reasons I'm running, because I realize how important it is when we talk about growing a city, how important it is to have great schools and have a city that collaborates with our education system. And so I think there's a room for improvement. I think there's more we can do aside from communicating on the things that we do together. I think we can communicate on vision, bringing a vision forward for really growing the city, because we keep talking about growing a city, but we know you don't grow a city without employed citizens building into the economy of the system. And so we have all those data points that show us that we need to make vast improvements. And so I want us to get beyond just talking about the dollars that are owed to us from the casino, the dollars that are owed to us from the stadium deal, and those kinds of things that we are stuck on. I want us to get to real collaboration with our schools.
Shawn, another sort of issue that candidates, especially newer candidates, love to talk about is more emphasis on neighborhood development.
Yes.
And on your platform, you say that you want to, quote, you want to emphasize expanding and retaining businesses in all 34 city neighborhood business districts.
Right.
My question is that the smart policy? It might be a desire, but is that, given what's happening to retail, and that's what's in most of these neighborhood business districts, it's relatively small retail.
Yes.
You know, that's moving out to places like Rookwood, like Kenwood, like Moran County, like Butler County. Is it smarter to do more of a triage and say these are the neighborhood business districts that can really work, and therefore we're going to put our energy there, rather than saying we're going to do them all?
Well, let me answer your question first. Yes, yes, it is possible, and I think it is a smart policy to look at. Neighborhoods, a city is only as strong as its neighborhoods, and we have great potential in our 34 business districts that connect our 52. 3CDC, the development company, is in what they did in OTR is a good example of development when the city government and private corporation come together and collaborate. I think that we have an additional opportunity to collaborate with the Port Authority, which is really the developmental arm of government. We directed with the county. So they're bonded, and they could have a real potential to develop and look at a strategy in our 34 business districts, not all at the same time, but a smart approach, a scientific approach to see where the low-hanging fruit is for investment. And I think that that's a good example of partnership and smart growth. And the city will grow.
Yeah, because I would say that in the case of 3CDC and Over the Rhine, their policy was we're going to focus first on the Vine Street corridor before we do anything else.
Strategy.
We can't do everything at once, and they're making quite an impact.
Right.
So, both of you on your websites talk a lot, and you already mentioned it, and in one way you have too, about economic development. And what should city government be doing in terms of economic development and creation of jobs?
Yes.
And both of those together, because they're connected, but they're not necessarily exactly the same thing.
They're different.
So I released a video last week on my website and YouTube that talks about what I believe we need to do, and that is to incentivize those businesses, have business-friendly policies that are employing our hardest to work citizen. And I featured Nehemiah Manufacturing as one of those businesses who are doing that. When you talk about, again, our high poverty rate, and you talk about our high child poverty rate, we need to get citizens back to work, and we need to be cognizant of who our citizens are, and that we need to be incentivizing those companies. I think the emphasis on pro-romance was absolutely fabulous, but we also need to be accelerating our strategies for those companies who are willing to put those folks back to work.
Shawn?
Yeah, if I could weigh in, I think that we've had a good track record of creating a good business culture here in Cincinnati. I think that we, as the city government, could work closer with the Cincinnati Regional Chamber of Commerce to attract businesses here to our city. That's one way we can realistically play a role in selling Cincinnati to these businesses. And look, businesses they keep up on where the hot beds are in the nation. Forbes just ranked us as the top 10 emerging cities in America. People hear about that. People want to come downtown right now, and so government plays a role, especially in our leadership, of really selling it. We did it with Graders. Graders couldn't get a loan from a bank that they banked with 100 years. And we stepped in, and now you can get graders all across America.
Because of the new Bond Hill
that's correct.
Facility.
For the facility. We invested in that, and we have to make smart investments.
And when you say we, you mean the city itself.
The city itself. Okay. The city of Cincinnati government.
Let me sort of follow this a little bit farther. Chris Seelbach championed and then got the city to adopt a policy on MSD contracting that any company that wanted to bid on those, I think it's $3.2 billion of construction that's coming up, they had to include in their contracts, in effect, a job training element.
Yes.
The county has pushed back on that, saying, because a lot of the companies say, well, we don't want to do that because that increases our costs. Where do you stand on the city's ordinance that demands that contractors include, in effect, an apprenticeship program? Do you think that's good or bad policy?
Well, I think that that's a policy that could work. It just, you know, what I think of this policy now is it really needs to be retooled. Both sides are expressing two different views, and what really matters is where are these jobs? What does this mean for Cincinnatians? So Cincinnatians are, we have to continue to develop our workforce here and make them prepared for these jobs. But at the same time, these are public dollars that we're talking about, and we have to be accountable to the public here. And so there's arguments on both sides, and I think that we can work better together to make that more clear.
I'm going to try to pin you down because you're going to be pinned down if you get elected. So would you support what the city stands for at the moment, the ordinance that passed, or do you say it does need to be retooled, in your words?
I think it needs to be retooled.
Okay. Vanessa?
I agree. I think the ordinance that was passed admittedly had a lot of flaws that would not include some of the other kinds of companies, and I think those progressions are happening. The $400,000, the exemptions, and the inclusion of small businesses. There was a headline in the paper this morning that talked about yet another tweak that was put forth that and I can't remember it, I didn't get to read the story, but I think that there's admittance that the policy is not where it needs to be. I think the important thing is skill building. And so we need to get people back to work.
And that's what this policy was about, though.
It's about skill building.
Developing skills for local people.
I think that, I mean, if you think about even Cincinnati State, you can go to Cincinnati State and get a skill in 2 years. I don't think you should have to wait 5 years to get a skill. And so I think there's some opportunities to collaborate with other entities to get that skill going so that workers can have those skills and be able to move forward and not necessarily have to work 5 years. So I think there needs to be strategies that are connected with it to increase skills, but I don't think there's only one way to skin a cat, so to speak.
And after that after we come to resolve there, we have to market it to the community. See, there's a lot of policies and there's a lot of resources that we collaborate with the Hamilton County to provide folks, but they just don't know about. We have to market what our resources.
Vanessa, this is for both of you, but let's start with Vanessa. What do you think should be done with the money that the city's going to get from the parking deal? Whether that turns out to be $88 million or $92 million, it really doesn't make that much difference. How do you think the city should use that money?
I think that's a great question, especially since it's all back in play again. I definitely think we need to deal with our pension system and use a great portion of those dollars to deal with that issue. I am opposed to the issue on the ballot because I do believe that people have worked on the pension issue, have worked for that pension, and so I think we have a great responsibility before we start spending it off in other places to honor our commitments that we've already made.
Well, there's been a request for a preliminary request for $30 million. Is that the right level? Or would you put more money into the pension or less money into the pension?
I'd be apt to put more money into the pension.
Okay. Shawn, where are you on this?
I agree with Vanessa. We do owe our city retirees their share. You know, we have to be honest by them and talk about where we make our increases as it pertains to the pension. It's a hot conversation and it's a lot of moving pieces. But you know, I know myself, tough decisions are going to have to be made, and I'm willing to have a conversation about it, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a decision, and I do think we need to make some increases.
Shawn, you've been in the mayor's office, not as mayor.
Not as mayor.
But everybody wants a balanced budget.
Yes.
And so what are we going to have to do to get there, and is the number of police in the Cincinnati Police Department on the table in that discussion?
For me, no.
For no?
No. I'm not sacrificing our public safety. It's our duty to uphold public safety.
And you think that number can't be moved, as Lori Quinlivan has suggested?
Well, when you talk about public safety and sacrificing it, I don't see them as connected. Looking at the numbers and us maintaining a structured and safe government is what we've done in the past. And I want to say this. I've been through many budget cycles. We went from $60 million to around $30 million deficit. We cut it, and we got to continue to do the same things.
Less than 30 seconds. Where do you stand on the police, the budget, and balanced budget?
Certainly believe in a balanced budget. As a member of school board, we've balanced our budget Ever since I've been connected with the district, we have to, but I don't know if the staffing levels are right or not, because we don't really have comprehensive conversations about whether that is in play. But I believe we need to balance the budget.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. We'll see you on election night. The Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County is one of the highest-rated libraries in the nation by outside professional associations. In 2010, it was named a Star Library based on per capita service for library visits, circulation program attendance, and the public library's computer use. And it is one of the only 3 public libraries in the top 10 for collection size, 9.3 million items, right up there with the Library of Congress and the New York Public Library. On November 5th, issue 1 on the Hamilton County ballot asked voters to renew a $1 mil property tax for 10 years for operating and capital expenses. The $1 mil renewal will cost property owners about $30 a year for every $100,000 valuation of their real estate. To discuss the issue 1, I am joined by Kim Fender, the director of the Public Library since 1999, and William Moran, who is president of the Library Board of Trustees. Mr. Moran has served on the library's board since 1996 and is a senior vice president at Fifth Third Bank, responsible for corporate facilities and security departments. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You two were with me 4 years ago when we talked about the first levy. And let me ask you this question, Bill. One of the few things that people have sort of commented on this time around, and you won overwhelmingly last time, 73% of the vote, I mean, it's unheard of, is the fact that you're going for a 10-year levy rather than what we see most often on these operating levies as 5-year levies. Why did the board decide to do that?
Well, it's very costly to run a levy campaign, and it really gives us so we save that money, and it really gives us a chance now to know what our finances are going to be for the next 10 years as far as the income's concerned. The levy is a really important part of our budget, and to have that known for the next 10 years is really important to us.
So from a planning point of view?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take a quick look. I have some data up about your revenue sources, and I think it's important for people to see how this levy fits in. You can see here that the state public library fund accounts for 62+%. This county levy for 31.2%. And then fines and fees, otherwise known as the Daniel Hurley Fund, at 3.2%, and then some really small stuff. So the Public Library Fund, Kim, comes from the state. This is only the second time you have asked for a local levy. And let's remind people what's happened to that state funding over the last few years.
Well, over the last few years, the state funding has dropped by more than 30%. And that's both the economy with tax collections at the state level dropping, and it's also a result of some legislative actions that cut that percentage. So overall, we've lost more than 30% of our income from that public library fund, which really left us with 2 choices: either find a new source of revenue, which we did with the property tax levy, or significantly reduce the library services that we provide. And we really felt that the people of Hamilton County not only wanted but needed the level of service we're providing.
You know, one of the things is on election night to count votes, and if you're running a school levy, you're always worried about how many of your parents went out to vote, as opposed to the people in your district who don't have any direct relationship with the school district. When it comes to the library, Hamilton County has about 850,000 people living in Hamilton County, round numbers. How many people have library cards?
We have more than 500,000 people with library cards right now, and that represents about 88% of Hamilton County households having at least one library card. So we have a really good reach into the community, many more than what you would see with parents in a school, for example.
Yeah, so it's, you know, that touch, those touches into the community before you ever do a campaign.
Right.
So going forward, okay, this levy basically fills in the cuts in the state funding.
Right.
The library has always been pretty conservative in its use of its funds, no matter where they were coming from, has been my observation, even on the level of building new facilities. And
Right.
and how many branches?
We have 41 total,
Okay.
including the main library.
Yeah, okay, yeah, some people don't think of that as a branch, but
Right.
you call it a branch. So even when you've built new things, you haven't floated a second bond issue.
Right. We pride ourselves in the fact that we don't have any debt. And I'll tell you, being on the board for 17 years, 4 years ago, it took a lot of soul searching on my part as well as the rest of the Board of Trustees to even ask the public for a levy, because we operated without a levy for a long time. So we need it. It's 30+% of our budget, and we're hoping that the county residents approve it again this year.
So this levy, if it passes, will help do things not only in terms of running the day-to-day operation of the library, but also of I know there's a couple of projects, sort of capital projects going on in Clifton, I'm aware of, and I think in Avondale. Is that correct?
Right, and in Reading.
In St. Bernard.
In St. Bernard. And we really, we save for those. We put money aside every year, so we don't have to go for a bond issue. So we save for that, just like people budget at home, save for the new television set or new car. So we save for our new facilities.
Kim, from a librarian's point of view, as opposed from a board member running all the finances and all of that, from a librarian's point of view, your world's changing a lot, just like everybody's world's changing, television, print media, with more and more digital components in the library. And of course, we all know that with the rentals of music, DVDs, movies, and all of that. But it affects books as well. How's that going to affect the role of a library going forward?
This is a question I get asked a lot. People ask me about the future of the library, and I say to them, what I want to talk to you about is the library of the future. And so what we're seeing is that many of the books that are in digital format, people can download and use on their e-reader, and then after the loan period is up, it just gets returned. So that fines and fee money goes away gradually. But it is nowhere close to replacing what we do in terms of print circulation. This year we are up. Right now we're up in print circulation, and we're up in digital circulation as well.
Up in borrowing?
And the number of items borrowed. And so our print circulation is just under 7 million year to date. And our digital circulation for everything, music, movies, and books, is a little over 1 million. So you can see there's still a significant gap there.
Dan, I'll equate that to banking. People ask me all the time, what's the bank of the future going to look like? And I say, I think our customers are going to tell us what the bank of the future looks like. And I think the library is reacting to what their customers are really looking for out of a library.
I'd like to even say anticipating what our customers are looking for rather than reacting, so that we're always a little bit ahead.
One of the things too, because and I purposely put it into the introduction, it is computer use. For those of us who are middle class and we have our computers and our handhelds and all of that kind of great stuff, there's a lot of people who don't have access to computers, and the library really does provide internet access for lots of people in this community, and we can't downplay that.
I think that's a really crucial role for public libraries to continue playing, because when you talk about providing access to information, someone who is without internet access in this day and age really is missing out on a lot of the most current, up-to-date information. So we see about 2 million computer sessions each year, but the other thing is, even people who have a computer, they may not have internet access at home because of that cost, so they may bring their laptop or their tablet into the library and use our Wi-Fi. So they're not dependent even just on our equipment, but on our internet access more.
Final thing, Bill, I want to make clear that this is a renewal. There's no increase here, right? And realistically, what would this mean if this didn't pass?
It would be devastating for the library system. We would have to close branches. We'd have to lay off people. We'd have to decrease the amount of books and tapes and things that we buy for the public, and it would devastate the library system.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the great organization that the library is.
Appreciate it.
In 2012, we can just go ahead to the close here. Thank you for being here this morning, joining Local 12 Newsmakers. Make sure that you also join us on Tuesday night for the live debate between Roxanne Qualls and John Cranley, the mayoral debate. And if you'd like to submit questions, you can submit them to local12.com, and we can use it. I will be the MC that night, and watch us on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.